The first issue has a due date of the end of July in 2023. Is that just the way the tally was set up? It's hard to reset those, I imagine?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Do you know when the actual due date is on that one?
We're already receiving that, so that was already completed. It probably should be
actually is
yellow, but
completed.
yeah.
Yep,
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So they're just still on.
Okay, seeing no questions, move on to the transit ridership report. Looks like the numbers bounced up a little bit again.
Correct.
Does anybody have any questions with the updated report? Everything looks good? Is there anything you'd like to add to,
Oh, no, nothing to add. Just, you see the note there for the insurance, so that's why it was higher in July for the total cost.
yeah, okay.
Is that insurance once a year?
Yeah, it's once a year.
Annual. That's what I thought.
Still no questions? Okay. Seeing no questions, we'll move on to, let's see, Resolution 2024, IT Fund Balance Transfer. I'll need a motion in a second. Motion by Supervisor Hartwig, second by Supervisor Vespelic. Go ahead.
All right, good evening.
How you doing?
So I'm looking at, as your report says, to backfill a security position. A little bit of history on this. Back in 2020, the previous IT director went before the board, and the board approved my position back then, which brought me to the county. Then in 2022, I was promoted to the director of IT, and I was kind of doing dual roles there. And I think now we are back to the point where it's too much for one position to do both roles, and especially with taking on IT shared services. So now we are assisting these municipalities with their security. So this position would be backfilling that position, as well as overseeing the IT security for the IT shared services as well. Also, I included in your packet some of the things to showcase kind of what we did in the last couple of years with security. The one report I show you, really on the first page, we have tools in place now that I can tell when anyone's trying to get into the network, what country they're coming from. We can see in this 1 month report, 9,000 attempts from China trying to access into our systems. 1,000 attempts from Russia just in 1 month. So I get a lot of detail. There's a lot of work that tools that we have that really require a dedicated person kind of looking at this on a daily basis, which is kind of hard to fill a director doing engineering work in security. So essentially that's what I'm bringing forth before you guys tonight.
Okay. The one question I have, is there any way we can invoice China for this?
I wish.
Anybody else have any questions? See no questions?
Mr. Chair?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, right.
Scott?
Thank
There
you.
go.
I think it's also important. I want to thank Joel for looking into this and doing the work to make this happen. We also have a security audit that is completed by Washington County, and Joel will most likely go before the county board next month in closed session to provide you the updates on that security audit. This was one of those things that was brought up by that security audit, to have someone that's just dedicated to security position for that very reason. I'm sure you've heard of other companies who've been hit through the years, and now, like Joel mentioned, extending that service to the local municipalities, even such a more bright light needs to be shined on security for that purpose. Make sure they're not hit locally as well.
I appreciate that. And, I apologize. I'm on the internet here, and I don't go through our meetings, so it was out of order.
Oh.
So I see further down you got the IT stuff that I missed before. I don't know if everybody else saw those reports on there. So any other questions?
I had a quick question. So so the 170K, Joel, that's, is that, so it's a year and 2 months, is that all in? That's their insurance, their, WRS, all that, and?
Yes, that is a number provided to me by the budget department, and that is considering salary, benefits, and everything.
Oh, you guys are cheap, okay.
That's where we do work for the local municipalities. Help save them money as well.
Right.
No, I just meant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see you're paying for this with $170,000 out of a IT technology fund. Can you explain what that is?
Yes, so the IT department, we are an enterprise fund, meaning we're funded by the other departments for services provided to those departments. And this fund is savings from previous years. So as an example, we do a budget, and that budget is approved now 2 years in it for a 2-year period. But during that time, I'm negotiating with our vendors on newer costs. So our budget is this, and now I get a newer cost and do my due diligence for the county, and that money goes to our enterprise general fund. Am I saying that right? Okay. So over the years, and some of these funds come back for when we hire or we anticipate hiring an employee, but we don't have that employee, so that money just stays in our general fund or enterprise fund, I should say. So that's where this money's coming out of. And
So-
we do have a healthy fund, and this fund is usually stored for things like an emergency. If we have a ransomware attack for some odd reason, these funds would go and help pay services to help restore. Or if something catastrophic happens to the data center, we have to replace equipment. That's what this fund exists for, or in situations like this as well.
So we can pay it for now, but when we do the next 2-year budget, we'll have to put it in the budget,
That is correct.
probably.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, I think was obviously with the IT world, if something major goes down, to wait a month for the committee and board to decide if something needs to be back up. That's why you have this fund, is to be able to react very quickly to make that happen, to get the county back up on its feet, or whatever happens.
Okay, so at this time, since the money's there and it's already been approved in a budget, we're actually approving to add a person then, more so than adding the money, right?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions then?
This will not go before the full board then?
We will.
It will, okay, so we're recommending, if we approve it, recommend it, and then we'll push it to the, okay.
Be a resolution.
Yeah.
Correct.
Will that be for next month then? for board?
I guess so, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, well then, all approved, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, moving to item D, advertising on shared ride taxi vehicles.
Hello.
How you doing?
Hi.
Can we build China for this?
Yeah. Let's see here. So we've been looking into creative sources that can be used as local match for transit federal grants. So we have 30 taxis that travel all over Washington and Ozaukee County every day. So we figure that's the perfect opportunity for advertisers. There are several firms out there that will do all the work, from getting the advertisers to installing to maintaining the wraps on the vehicles. I've attached a advertising policy so we can avoid any mishaps with advertising. I've reached out to other transit agencies that also advertise on their vehicles. They've never had an incident of a improper advertisement, and they've had some pretty good luck with the advertisers on their vehicles.
A question for you. So you got the policy here, but does somebody still review the advertisements before or does it go through an approval process, even though you have this spelled out here, before it would go on to the vehicles?
That could be included in the contract for a pre-approval for every ad. Yeah, that could be added.
I think that would be a smart thing, just to put a second eye on it again.
our county vehicles, and we're putting advertise them on. It'd be nice to know what's going on them before it goes on them.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it has to come before us,
Yeah.
but just somebody.
Correct. Staff
in
can
there
review
them,
those.
Right?
Right.
Make sure it matches policy.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
Scott, I know, I see a lot of them on the road, you have 30 of them. Who services them and maintains them, keeps them?
Our contractor maintains the vehicles for us.
Okay, you don't do it over time? We do?
Correct. Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Do you have any idea of, let's just say we get 100% advertising on all the vehicles, what kind of offset that would be?
So it could be like around $250 per vehicle per month. It could be
Okay.
up to that. That was a generous estimate from one of the contracted vendors. That could be around $50,000 a year if all the taxis are wrapped. But we are including in the contract a minimum of $1,000 per month, just so for grant writing we can estimate we'll at least get $12,000 a year from this advertising.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And
Between 12 and 15.
Right.
And as I could point out, what this does is this directly impacts the levy amount that the county spends. So if the county was going to spend $300,000 and we get $12,000, now we're only spending $288,000. So I give credit to Charlie to look outside the box for outside funding sources to help supplement transit in Washington County.
Okay. Did we need approval on this?
No, this is just an update.
Yeah,
Thanks.
just an update.
Okay, I want to
Yep.
make sure. Okay, any questions?
I have
Any
a
other
quick one. So the
questions?
advertising would always be in the form of a wrap on the vehicle? That's
Yep,
what-
it would only be on the outside, form of the.
Just on the outside, a wrap?
Yep, and we're not allowing it on the curb side, just so if people are getting picked up, they know it's the shared ride taxi. It's not, some, Kohler Credit Union coming to pick them up or something. It's, it's the shared ride taxi.
Right.
We want to make sure our brand is out there and they know when to get on, they're in a safe vehicle.
Yeah.
Yep.
I understand. Interesting. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item E, 2024 resolution, discontinue excess right-of-way and authorize sale of adjoined landowners. We'll need a motion and a second on this one. Motion by Supervisor Vespelic and second by, was that you, Ken?
You got it.
Okay.
Mikulik. Roger Dawson.
Second for Ken McCulick. Okay, did you want to speak on this again?
I certainly can. Things are in your packet. As you know, we are going
Yeah.
through and looking at access right away throughout the county. And Ted Dumke, our project engineer and surveyor, has done a fantastic job of starting to make contact with landowners. As you can imagine, it's a tedious process of going back and forth and negotiating prices with landowners of right away that they could otherwise mow independently. So we're appreciative to the two landowners that are stepping up in this instance to purchase this right away, to get it back onto the tax rolls and outside of the right away, so we don't have to deal with other issues that might come up with needing county highway right away that is potentially usable for other purposes.
Okay. Sounds good. Any questions? See no questions. All approved, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Last but not least, Mr. Josh, road safety plan.
All right, good afternoon. So if you remember, just last month I was here presenting our intersection safety analysis. So this is kind of piggybacking, this is kind of the next step off of that effort. So just a little bit of background. Yep.
We're going to bring it up on the screens as well to help follow along.
There we go. So our intersection plan was originally, the first edition was using data from 2013 to 2017. Then the one I presented, our second edition last month, was 2018 to 2022. So as a continuing effort off of that, we wanted to look at the remainder of the county highway system. So outside of those intersection areas, the intersection plan looked at a 250-foot radius from the center of the intersections and going around there and identifying those crashes. This is looking at everything else on the Washington County highway system. So very similar, and if you, if you're comfortable with your recollection on how that plan was put together, looking at those three elements of total crashes, crash rate, and crash severity, we used a very similar path to produce what we have here today. The only significant difference would be now we don't have that defined area of using that intersection point. We're looking at roadway segments. So what we did was use this quote-unquote normalization process to kind of rate out based off roadway segment length. So when we dive into it in our GIS system, roadway segment length can be a few hundred feet up to 10,000 feet or multiple miles. It's just a very random thing how they are in the system. So that's the way we decided to go with it. There are a few other ideas were discussed, but that's the methodology behind this plan. So the beginning of the plan kind of lays out a little bit of foundation on our system in general. Talks about some general crash trends in Wisconsin in general. Then we start diving into some of the inventory of our system itself. So we're looking at about 173 centerline miles of road that were looked at in this plan. We break it down by functional classification. We got our arterials, collectors, and locals. About 75% of the county highway system is collectors. So based on the functional classification, that triggers, and along with ADT, average daily traffic, so the volumes of traffic on the roads, that triggers how roads are built to quote-unquote county standards. So as you get into that, you can flip through the maps if you want, or if you want to stop and ask questions about anything as I scroll through the beginning of it. You can see the map. Map 2 highlights functional classifications. So most of it is green. That's that collector. Taking that a step further, you can look at Appendix A. That's highlighting Trans 205, as well as Appendix B, that's on pages 20 and 21, on how some of the standards are utilized when building county highways. Talks about the 3 R's. So if there's want to make exceptions to those rules in Trans 205, we often try to go the 3R rule of just repaving, and maybe this logically it doesn't make sense to purchase a lot of right of way. If you don't need to widen it out, why do it? If there's no issues there, why go that route? So we try to use that as much as possible. Then the plan gets into the methodology, talking about the number of crashes, crash rate, crash severity. You can see the different, on map 3, you can see the segments there. You can see the red dots that were highlighted in the intersection plan. So this is looking at everything in green on map 3. Wanted to highlight a little bit of our data source here. So I get into the community maps through the Traffic Information Center that's housed by UW-Madison. That's where all that crash information, if you remember from the intersection plan, whenever law enforcement responds to a crash, all that the reports that they do are uploaded into this database. So I'm in here very regularly, and that's where we pulled the data from. Mike Vanderstanden from GIS imports it. He runs his magical analysis behind the scenes, and he produces our top 5 list for each one of those 3 categories. So total crashes on page 9 of the plan itself talks about total crashes. So there you can see our top 5 list, and then each one that came up in the top 5 is what we profiled, similar to the intersection plan, breaking it down on what we see as far as trends and potential remedies. So I'm just going to kind of cruise through here a little bit of the methodology, then I want to dive into some of those profiles. So there's a top 5 list. Page 10 gets into crash rate. You can see the map 2 on page 11, map 3, highlighting the ones with total crashes. Map 4, highlighting segments high in crash rate, the top 5. So you can see the highlighted sections are different sizes. So that's kind of the main difference between this plan and the intersection plan. Map 5, page 14, highlights the segments of highest severity. So that's severity is where you have your different degrees of crashes dealing with injuries, whether it's property damage only, different levels of injury, or if there is a fatality that does get weighted heavier. gets it higher up on the list. It's also relative to crash volume. So I'm going to jump over the funding part for now, and then come back to that after we talk about some of these specifically. Table 7 kind of puts it all together. You can see the overall list of the top 5s that came about through total crash rate, total crash numbers, crash rate, and crash severity. And there was two areas that overlapped on XX and Highway Q, so I'll get into that. Map 6 kind of gives you a visual on everything there from Table 7. So these are all areas that are profiled at the end of the plan. First one I'd like to highlight is County Highway K, City of Hartford, from Shower Drive to Highway 60. So this is by that new Quick Trip, kind of just north of the Town Hall, Hartford Town Hall. Any questions so far on any of the methodology or anything like that? Feel free to stop me if anything jumps out at you. Just want
Now this one you're talking about right now, that Quick Trip's about 15 years old, so.
yeah. Yep.
But it is a shit show right there.
So, yeah, there's a spot for the narrative. You can add that. So this one actually came up based on our normalization process with the number 1 for number of crashes based on the segment length. So we dive in and I look at every single one of these crash reports. So on each profile, I put together an aerial photo, and then where these dots, you see the green dots on that first image there on the left, yellow dots. Green would be property damage only. Yellow, there was an injury. If there's a red dot, a fatality. I'll also put together some visuals just using Street View. Some of the pictures I took, some are snapshots from Google Earth, whatever I could use to get a good visual to demonstrate a visual representation of that area and showing areas where, crashes are occurring. Then we sat down and we discussed what we think is potential problems, contributing factors. Obviously, the addition of Quick Trip there was a significant change in that area, and a lot of the crashes here, to us, seem to be attributed to that driveway coming out onto Highway K. Also, when you get across it, you got a wider segment there. You got a little bit of a raised concrete median. If you're turning north out of that driveway or coming down that road, you got multiple turn lanes as you approach Highway 60. So currently this area is not in our CIP, but we have been discussing potential resurfacing and improvements in that area. We could work that into the CIP. We think, and then as you get down in the next page of that profile there, kind of sums everything up of what I'm talking about. But we developed some potential remedies, what we think could potentially help. A lot of these crashes, though, in some of these segments, if you got a couple of crashes, it's not always, in our opinion, due to the roadway. A lot of it's human error. So we got to kind of take it with a grain of salt. Some of these areas that are highlighted in this plan, we feel that there's really nothing else we could do at this time. We got some ideas. There's always some improvements we could maybe make, but it's just the way that the data produced the list, and sometimes it's just human error that can't always be directly solved through a change of what we have out there. So we do plan on resurfacing this in the not too distant future. We will be analyzing the lane delineations, that concrete median, to see if we could simplify the movements and the clarity of movements through that area. Then we worked with Sewer Pack, and they produced again the diagrams here, which I think are a fantastic visual aid to show where things are happening and a brief description of what happened as far as the crashes. So as we get into this, the one thing that this doesn't identify is the type of vehicle. It doesn't necessarily specify if there was a motorcycle. Sometimes it does. There was a motorcycle crash involved at this site, but there's others where this description doesn't identify motorcycle crashes, but I know that just from going through the reports myself, if there is motorcycle crashes, which tend to have more severity when it comes to injury. So that does trigger it to push higher up on the list in a hurry. Any other questions or comments? Scott's going on this one.
I do have one little question. I think I've asked this before when we went through this a few years back. So if you take out the human error part, Would that give you more accurate or a completely different outlook on these roads? I mean, can they do that, or do they look at it that way?
It's such a gray area. I mean, it's more of our opinion.
I think that's what you said the last time,
Yeah,
too.
and that's why we just got to be as true with it. We just, in our mind, we got to make our own judgment calls on what
Sure.
we think we can approve and what maybe isn't doable.
Right.
Right, if you look at the sheet that Josh has up there, and I do want to thank Sewer Pack for these are invaluable to us, but you'll see the driver cause, that's what usually the deputy or the police officer puts in there. You can see, one of them look but did not see. Inattentive driving, as we all know, that's increasing anecdotally. I know that. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know that just driving down the roadway, there's a lot more people on their phones and swerving and stuff like that. So you'll see later on about the edge line rumble strips and center line rumble strips and whatnot. We took that into consideration. We look at that, but then we look at, okay, why were they not paying attention? Why did they not see that? How could they not possibly see somebody coming? What was going on? Were they looking? Was it traffic moving too fast, or they're too nervous, or something like that, or something else that caused that action at that time? So we take it in, but just like you'll point out that we take into account the drunk drivers too, right? We don't just automatically throw those out the window. We'd say, is there something we can do to help those that are impaired to stay in the lane of traffic versus crossing it over or going off the lane of traffic? So we do take those into account too. We maybe take a little, let's look at them sometimes going, okay, there's one drunk driver in a mile segment going, okay, probably not much we can do about that, but there's multiple ones in the same area going, all right, do we need enforcement? Is there a local tavern we can work with, or is there a way to put something in that area to help keep those people, on the roadway or something like that? So like this one, for instance, you can see that most of the crashes are happening, people that are going southbound, right, which is an oddity to us going, we just did Highway Q intersection going, most people going towards the intersection were crashing. Now we got people that are going up the hill, and as Josh pointed out, some lane delineations, maybe losing that raised median might be helpful. There's quite a bit going on at that intersection at certain times of day, and we'll look at that too going, are these all happening? That's what's great about this. Are they happening? You see a couple are in the early morning and then around that lunch hour. Quick Trip is well known for their snacks and food that they have there, and just looking at that too. So 2 teens in that area as well. So all that stuff we look at and try to mash it all together as best we can and make some kind of analysis of it. So it all gets thrown in there.
I'm encouraged that they have 2 teens, but they don't notice old people driving.
Yep, not in this one.
Right?
I believe that is a box you can check on the accident report if it's like 65 or over, but we won't go down that path today.
We appreciate that.
Can I make a note on that intersection? Because I literally go through there every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's really confusing about that when you get on there? When you look at that road, it's either one really wide, it's not marked 2 lanes or one.
Right.
So what happens is somebody's making a right turn, and they think that the person making the left-hand turn has their own lane, and they're getting into a lane. If you look at that, it's really confusing. Hartford has the same thing too on Monroe Avenue, which is this road that's like 24 feet wide on each side, and then there's a center light, but it's definitely 2 lanes, but it's not marked as 2 lanes. And so people drive down the middle of the 2. So I'm just telling you, that's what happens
That's
there.
why you'll see one of the solutions is
and then a couple of people take a right turn going into that Quick Trip, and bam, bam, bam.
right. That's where we notice that too. That it's pretty wide right there. If we can get rid of that concrete median too, some people might go on it to make a turn. Some people might not like to go on it to get a turn. It's harder to plow that in winter. So all that kind of stuff, like Josh said, that's when we look at this going, we think we can make some pretty inexpensive improvements
Yeah, that
to begin with.
intersection is super not intuitive at all.
And we did lower the speed limit. Some of you may recall several years ago, we did lower the speed limit in that area from 45 down to 35, but in 2019, I believe it was. So again, some things you try like that, and I think it's time for a little bit more effort.
With that being said, though, too, I noticed in West Bend where they do have a turning lane in the center, some people use that to pass, some people use it, or some people don't even get into it when they want to turn, so they're still blocking.
Yeah, that demonstrates the importance of like the clear lane delineations and try to avoid people making assumptions, because that's what the human error there.
Yeah, that's the
it looks
two
like it's to the
arrows
road, but
that
it's and sometimes it is a simple fix. You paint a line, it makes a huge difference. So that's where we try to look for those solutions. It also shows that the importance of looking ahead when a new business comes in, not picking on Quick Trip here, but generally speaking, when you do that traffic impact analysis of a new business or a business park or something like that, how it alters traffic. And even a simple driveway might not seem like much to most people, but it is a huge difference to the traffic flow and potential crashes and things like this. So,
Yeah, or the daily traffic count.
absolutely.
Right.
Yep. Any other comments on this one? I'm going to keep on going through the plan. Next one is on Highway Q, down by just west of the freeway, that 41 freeway there. This is just a very small segment that had just happened to randomly have a couple of crashes that fell outside of those intersection boundaries and plunked into this little short stretch there between two intersections. So for this one, we look very closely through the intersection review process, and it's just that whole corridor in general. We looked at lane delineations. We try to keep the pavement markings fresh and up to date. Always looking for improvements there too, to try to eliminate as much confusion. But there's just a ton of things happening jammed in that corridor. That's our busiest corridor on the entire county highway system. Just happened that this fall, these couple intersections fell on that little orphan area between the two intersections. So we will be looking at this in traffic flow and the timing of the lights. So not just a roadway segment issue, but the whole corridor itself. We'll keep an eye on that as always, moving forward to see if there's anything we can do there. Fortunately, those are just usually, knock on wood, minor crashes, property damage, fender benders, low speed, high volume traffic there. Moving on to number 3, Highway P. This is just by Fair Park there, north of the PV roundabout. Again, this is just a short segment there that a lot of this was just human error or just bad luck, we'll call it. This involved 3 crashes on that tiny little area. And as I dove into it, debris fell out of a truck and the car hit it. Other accident was car fire. Happened to randomly happen on the shoulder of the road there. And the third one was somebody, it seemed like late at night during a fair a couple years ago, they pulled through the ditch and it was like a hit and run accident and they drove off. So not a lot that you can do there. That road was reconstructed in 2014. It's very wide shoulders. This is one of those cases where we don't feel there's anything we can really do to improve any issues brought forth here. But it is something, if there's issues with event traffic at Fair Park, we could work with them, potentially put a snow fence up or something like that to try to help with the traffic flow leaving events. On to profile number 4. This is a different Highway K out in the town of Addison and town of Hartford area. High total crashes here. So this is west of Highway 41. So this is a bigger segment here, pushing about almost a mile. And there's been just a whole kind of a spattering of crashes there over the years. This is one I think hopefully we're ahead of now. We reconstructed that roadway just a few years ago, 2019, 5 years ago. You can see on the bottom images there on page 31 of the plan, you can see the difference before and after pictures of what that road looked like a couple of years ago versus what it looks like now. So there's very wide shoulders, wide paved shoulders particularly, designated turn lanes. It's a lot to plow, but hopefully a lot safer for the traveling public now.
Your screen isn't.
Oh, I can bring that up. So. And there we go. Thank you. So there you can see the difference before and after. So at this point in time, we'll keep monitoring that area, but hopefully after reconstruction, a lot of those issues are potentially solved.
I'd like to point out that teen shows up 3 times.
The where?
Teen shows up 3 times in the reports.
Yes. Yeah. Any other comments on that one? I'll move on to number 5. This is out on Highway Q between Nob Hill West and North Road. This one came up again. This is a very short segment, but there was a fatality out in that area. It was a pedestrian or bicyclist. I'm sorry, that was struck by somebody that was following too closely. Bicyclist was wearing dark clothing, and according to the crash report, is there something that we could do out there? Maybe we could widen the shoulders, maybe there's something like that, we'll keep an eye on that, but I think this is just one of those anomalies that brought it up in this plan. It was worth taking a look at, but we'll keep that in mind as we do improve that road in the future. There are not any immediate plans in this area, but anything does start to flare up down there, we can start working that up in our timeline for improvement.
Oh, I'll make a small rant. I'm a bike rider myself, and I'm always alarmed at how many people bike on really busy roads. It's like they got a death threat. And when you
Not high vis.
and when you talk about widening the shoulder, this is another section that we share with another county. So if their shoulder is different than ours, that's not effective. You can drive up Wasaki Road, Highway M now, and where it changes from our section that was just redone to Ozaki County section, there is no shoulder in Ozaki County. So
Right. So this,
it's tough.
just kind of comment or echoing what you were getting at there. So Highway Q, we do have the highway department does have full jurisdiction of the full right of way, and it's segments that are broken up on different jurisdictions. So between point A and point B on a segment that's under Washington County's jurisdiction, we have the authority to widen that road as we see fit. We of course do have those conversations with neighboring counties and the neighboring township, village, and all of that all is discussed in advance. But yes, it does, to make it an effective corridor where we might lose jurisdiction on the next one. You hope that you don't wind up with wide road, narrow road, just going in and out like that. You try to maintain that consistency through communication and hopefully willing partners to help that whole stretch. Any other questions on this one? I'll keep going. Profile number 6, which I'll scroll down to. This is Highway XX, Town of Farmington. There we go. So this one, we had a little bit of a flare up there with crashes on the curves on Highway XX. So this is between Kohler Road and J Road. So this was repaved not too long ago. It was 2016, I think it was done. 15 or 16 was repaved. But crashes have occurred since then. This is one of the two ones that kind of really jumped out at us. This came up as number 1 for crash rate. Again, this is relative to traffic volume. So it's a rural area up there, not much traffic up there. But there were crashes that were coming up in this one curve. Also some severe, there's injuries, and so that's what brought it up towards the top of these lists. So just this past summer, we chip sealed up in that area. This is, for the first time, we used a granite aggregate. We had that trucked in, and we worked with Sheboygan County. Normally, we do a limestone chip seal out there to preserve the asphalt, extend the life of the pavement. Up on XX this year, we used a granite product. So it's a darker product than a normal limestone, which is a light gray, almost a white sort of color. This is a darker, not completely pitch black, but a dark gray. We're hoping that, and through that darker surface, you do get some extra thermal melting power when there's snow. It gathers the sunlight, melts snow off a little bit faster. Hopefully that helps. But we're hoping just the granite versus a limestone produces additional traction as well. So this is our first effort. This is part of our justification on it's a more costly measure to use granite versus limestone, but because of the safety issues that were flaring up in this plan, we decided to try that product. So now time will tell. We just did that in June of this summer, but hopefully it helps. We're also looking at the chevron area. There's chevron posts around these curves. There's advanced warning signage for reduced speed through the curves. There's curve ahead signs. We're going to make some adjustments on some of the distancing with some of that signage and kind of highlight that more with some reflectivity. So those are things that we have done and we're going to be doing here in the near future. So again, time will tell. Hopefully these crashes start to dissipate a little bit over time.
Can I make another quick observation? With the granite, and you just look at the picture, the contrast with the paint and the black background, that's a huge difference.
Yep.
It's
Definitely.
when you look at, and even some of those previous pictures, I was just going to say, man, you go down to Florida, it's like the road lays out right in front of you.
You're right.
And then, and I understand the, you know, the weather aspect of it, but here, like just some of these pictures you go back, I mean, everything is so is so faded, and then you get fog, rain,
Right.
and night.
Yep.
And
So
it's brutal.
after we chip seal using regular limestone, after we kind of make sure all that debris kind of wears off and we got a clean surface, we'll repaint that road. But again, we'll have to repaint that a few months later before winter just to make sure we have that full boldness on that lighter gray product before winter hits. And then you have plows that are working that paint off during the winter as well. So I'm very interested that Sheboygan County does a lot of this granite. They really bought into it. And I'm really anxious to see how this holds up, not just from, the looks of it, but from a safety perspective too. And if we notice a traction difference, it's something that we could continue to invest in because I think it's going to help extend the life of the road itself.
It just made me think about maintenance. Are you saying that this is high maintenance? Repainting it every couple months, plows wearing off?
We repaint all county roads every year. But after we do a chip seal, and you got that loose aggregate when you're done, because you lay that oil, you can see in the picture, here you put down that layer of oil first, and then there's a chip spreader. We hired Sheboygan County in to do that. They lay a layer of chips. So that's either the limestone or the granite product. So that's the bulk of it. But then afterwards, then you sweep that off. And now Sheboygan County, they just got a brand new machine. There's a lot less wasted product out there, which is a bonus cost savings from we budgeted a number and it came in lower. They use less product because of the new machine. So they're investing in their technology, and I'm really anxious to see how this one pans out over the next few years and see if crashes start to go down in that area.
And if I recall, isn't the granite a lot more expensive than the other stone?
It
Or
is. It is, but I'm hoping to normally we would chip seal twice in a pavement lifespan. We're getting more and more aggressive now too with our maintenance, trying to get that earlier. Like
Right.
after we repave or reconstruct a road, we're looking at year 8 and 16 for chip seal and crack filling halfway around. We're getting more aggressive with that. Now we're chip sealing in year 2, 3. I'm hoping, and time will tell, I'm trying to learn more about this granite product where I'm hoping this only requires one treatment. So even though the cost might be 4 or 5 times what limestone is, it might pay off in the long run, only having that labor once. I'm hoping that we only have to do it one time. It maintains the color. Time will tell on that as well. It's not fading. So I'm excited to see what this one does.
When you chip seal, do you use 1/4-inch limestone?
3/8 is the typical size.
3/8.
It's like a pea gravel.
Yep.
This is one you should be very proud of Josh on to bring this to our attention and looking at this stuff before the plan was actually finalized. To come up with that idea, as he's looking at this plan months ago, realized that there was an issue in this intersection and took initiative to actually start proactively addressing it, not waiting for this plan to be finalized and looked at it. So you can thank Josh for this. It's one we're, like Josh mentioned, really excited to look at and hopefully modeling the way for this and other municipalities as well, potentially in the future.
Yeah, and this might be an additional or a potential solution for a few of the other areas I'm about to highlight as well. So, and we're going to keep talking to Sheboygan County as they've been using this. They got a few years under their belt. If they see results for increased traction, cheaper than like a high friction surface treatment, but if we do have, we are always weighing that cost benefit. So we'll see what this produces. Any questions on this one? I'll keep on moving to the next one, Highway Q. So profile number 7 on page 42 of the plan. Highway Q between 83 and K. So this is, we nicknamed this one Jackrabbit Run, if you ever hear that nickname. Very windy, hilly, curvy area. So this one came up as number 2 for crash rate and number 1 for crash severity. So this one, again, just like XX, is 1 and 2 on the list. So this one jumps out in my mind quite severely. We just repaved this one a few years ago in 2020. Just the windiness of this road and the vertical and horizontal curves present a big challenge. There were as going through the crash reports, and I don't think it's really highlighted very clearly in the table here, but there were multiple motorcycle crashes that occurred up in this area. As you can imagine, you're down in that Holy Hill area, and I don't know if it's directly related to that, but there's a lot of motorcycle rides, tourism type traffic through there.
Not directly.
I would say there's, not definitively, but realistically, yes, probably. So yeah, there's a lot of motorcycles that go through there that lost control. One was a wet ice type speed thing. There were a few snow and ice crashes. There were some alcohol related crashes as well. We will be looking at the speed limit right there. If you go through that area, there's advisory speed limit reductions, ranging from 20 mile per hour to 45 mile per hour, depending on which curve. And there's several curves up and down through that area. We're going to be looking at that. We have not done anything since we put this plan together, but maybe this is another candidate for that Granite product if it helps keep vehicles on the road. If it does maintain better traction, maybe that's an option. Maybe it's a high friction treatment if it needs a little bit more. We'll be looking at that. So Scott and I have been kicking around a couple ideas here. We'll be looking at all the chevron layout through the curves and those advisory speeds. Maybe it's a speed limit reduction on the whole area. That's something that we're going to be looking at as well. Any questions on this one?
And any speed limit reduction does have to go to the full county board.
And also you gotta watch out for the deer.
Always.
With the Peterbilt.
Yep. All right, I'll keep on going to profile number 8 on page 46. This is Highway W up in the town of Wayne. There we go. So it's a straight segment. There is a hill there, but the road is very narrow. Minimal, I'll call it minimal shoulder. But I don't think, just based off the crashes, I don't think a lot of it was really related to the roadway itself. I think this is a kind of a clustered area of human error, just based on the type of accidents. If you look into the reports, you got it. If you look at the table on page 48, you bring that up. You got inattentiveness and you got drowsiness, noted in here. Muddy and wet road service. I mean, you do have farm equipment going in and out of fields out there. That's something that we respond to on a fairly regular basis. If mud gets tracked out into the road, we'll get calls, or we'll have to make some calls and have people clean that up. But we try to be very responsive when we have issues like that during harvest season. Mud gets tracked out on the road. That was one of the crashes here.
Who is responsible for that, Josh, if that happens?
We try to contact the farmer if possible.
And they're responsible for that?
Most of them are very good at being responsible for that. Same if you're coming out of like a
Construction
pit
site.
And you're dragging mud and rock and dirt out of a pit like that or a quarry. Most of them, or a landscaping company, where you got that's usually the biggest hot spots for debris in the road is their driveways.
How would you have them remedy that? Or they just go out there with a broom? Or?
Most of them have their own broom or a skid steer handy, and they'll get a call, or they'll try to keep. They don't want to get on the bad
Or a
list.
snowplow on a four-wheel drive truck. You have it set up for when you're combining.
There's been a few times. Yep.
That's what you do?
Yep.
There's been a few times where I remember one time a couple of years ago we got a call and we had to we couldn't get a hold of anybody. There was a ton of mud out there. We had to take one of our plows out there and blade it off.
That's what we use.
So that's one of the more severe situations. But they don't want to get on the. They don't want to be highlighted for
I
that.
was just curious.
Most of them are pretty good about it. So this is not in the CIP currently, but if we do it, we'll monitor traffic and crashes in this area as well. But it is on our radar. This roadway will be widened at some point in the future. Just that the crashes that we're seeing here just weren't really attributed to the roadway. It doesn't appear. But if we do widen out shoulders, that might help the situation as well. So we'll be working, keeping an eye on this one.
Josh, I was just going to ask, the reason we use a four-wheel drive truck, we have the flashers and everything on, skid loader, people don't see that, it's too slow to be
Right.
out there with.
Yeah, depending on the road. Yep,
Yeah.
definitely. On to profile number 9 on page 49. Again, this is up on XX, so this is a kind of an anomaly here too. This is a straightaway, just very low traffic volume. Help bump this one up This is just north of that curve. But again, this is all part of that area that we put granite on. There was one crash that involved some injuries where apparently the driver just did not see one vehicle and they pulled out in front of somebody near a residential driveway, and there's injury there, which is what triggered this one. Human error. I don't really see there's if anything on this stretch. There is a hill on the north end of this segment. Yeah, not anywhere near where this crash was, but this is granite. This is part of that same corridor. We highlighted it because that's what the data showed, but I don't really see a need to make much of a change up on this particular area of XX north of that curve. If you have any questions or comments on that one, I'll keep on going to Highway A, just staying up in the Farmington area here, east of 144, between Indian Lore and 144. This area is very flat, very straight area. Again, this one, I don't think the crashes really appear to be due to the physical attributes of the roadway. Again, there's just a lot of human error there. There's relatively high number of residential driveways along this area. It is 55 miles per hour, but you do have wider shoulders. You got 12-foot driving lanes. There were some injuries. Again, that's what triggers. You got 2 B-class crashes here. You got a total of 6 crashes, but 2 of them were B-level injury. So that's going to push it up the list more than others. We don't have this in the CIP either. I mean, the road is built to standards there. It is wide. But, we will look at, if we do need to add some turn lanes in this area, that could be considered in the future as well. Maybe around there's some businesses up on that road. There's like a junkyard body shop type area up there, and maybe near some of the residential areas. We could take a look at the turn lanes. So, any other questions or comments on that? I'll move on to profile number 11 on page 55 on Highway M. So this is between Pleasant Valley Road and NN, the town of Jackson. This one was number 3 for severity. Narrow road. It's a straight segment up until you get to the intersection of NN there, but that would be captured in our intersection plan. But just not real high, not relatively high traffic volumes out there either. But if you look at the crashes, there's 2 crashes in this area, both of them alcohol related. And one produced a level A injury in that crash. So that's what pushed it up this list. There's narrow driving lanes, there's little to no shoulder. But we do have this one in our CIP for widening. So in 2027, as it currently sits, it would be in for reconstruction. So, we already have the ball rolling on that. It's a few years out, but it already is on our radar, and this one is planned for widening. Any questions, comments? I'll go on to number 12.
Just have a question.
Yep.
On the south end where you redid in, it's all real nice, and then, is that one section, is that MEC one?
The one that we here?
Yes, just to the north there, as Chairman Schleif pointed out earlier, that is Mequon's responsibility, the city of Mequon.
Do you think they're ever gonna match up to what you guys did?
Highly unlikely.
The other section is so nice.
Yes, thank you.
On to number 12 on page 58, Highway S between County Highway R, which was formerly State Highway 83, and Crooked Road. Bring it up on the screen here. Number 4 for severity. Again, this is narrow lanes out there, narrow shoulders. There are some vertical curves. It's a straight segment, but there are some rolling hills. This one is not on our CIP at the moment, but we do anticipate this one in for a repave probably within the next 10 years. We could do some widening, and even if it isn't quote-unquote a reconstruction project, when we do put a project in for a full pulverize and repave, we are able, and we have made several changes on other areas too, where we might shave down a hill and fill in a valley and do some minor adjustments to elevation, open up sight lines, and also just reduction of hills and stuff like that is going to help hopefully keep people on the road, mainly for vision, but overall safety does tend to increase when we make those adjustments. So just looking at the crashes there's only 2 crashes. It's a fairly rural area out there, but 2 crashes, both with A-level injuries. This is going to push that one up.
Going to do a U-turn and eject your passenger.
We understand.
Yeah, that's why we got to look at these reports too and be like, is this really the road or is this really
human
human
error.
behavior? So take it with a grain of salt. You got alcohol. No, this one wasn't an alcohol one, but yes, you look at the details of the crashes and it's like, okay, it's not going to push it up our CIP list because of that particular crash. Put it that way. But hopefully that's not a reoccurring issue either. Any questions on this one? I'll go on to number 13. So last but not least, County Highway Y from Gravel Drive to West Main Street. So this is on the very far east border of Washington County, south of Newburgh, out in that area. Pretty rural out there, swampy, wooded area, sort of flat, straight segment of roadway, but there are a cluster of crashes in that area, putting that number 5 for severity. This one, I don't really see it being a lot involved with the actual attributes of the road. I think this is a lot of human error too. And if you look at the driver cause here, this one does not. I don't think when SewerPack made the descriptions here, they did not identify motorcycles. But I looked into the actual reports, and more than one of these crashes were a motorcycle. One was passing multiple cars and high rate of speed, crashed, severe injury. Not really much we can do roadway wise when it's a human decision and human error, unfortunately producing some pretty severe injuries and severe crashes. There are some things we could potentially widen this road out where needed. We do try to keep an eye on vegetation. There's driveways along this area it's marshy. There's a lot of high grass that gets close to the road. We try to keep up on trimming trees and mowing that at least one pass, keeping that vegetation at bay to open up sight lines so people can safely pull out of their driveways. We do the best we can trying to keep up on that. This year's been a challenge, but that's something we try to do. So we'll keep an eye on this one. I don't see this one being a lot related to the roadway itself. I think this is a lot of human error, and plus when you throw in some multiple motorcycles, it's going to unfortunately make its way up the severity list pretty quickly.
Being a marshy area, I don't know if I mentioned this or if you mentioned it before, but are you able to spray the weeds in that area if it's marshy?
You can. With the products that we use,
Okay.
There's really no limits on where you can go with that. We try to be smart. We're not gonna if there's environmentally sensitive areas and lawns and things like that, we try to do the best we can to pull back on that. But yes, in this particular area in general, there wouldn't be any limitations with the products that we use.
Okay.
I have a question. Down the years to come, when you would redo this road, would you take that little Reckles Hill down and kind of level it more? Where the Reckles farm is?
We would definitely look at, like Josh said, we look at these things all the time. Every time we pulverize or pave a roadway, Josh does a fantastic job of looking at crashes. We take our patrol supers out there. We take the person who's actually plowing the truck out there and ask them for improvements and look for that. So it's quite possible that we do that at that time. We've done it many times in my tenure here, and before my tenure as commissioner, I was the county engineer and designed many of the roadway redesigns. If actually one of the curves is not in there, I was able to redesign that before 2016, and we actually purchased them right away. And that might be one thing we look at some of the other curves in the future is to lessen the severity of the curve and the crashes by softening up the curve a little bit. So it's certainly something we look at, Supervisor Hartwig. Every time we do a roadway, we look at everything that we possibly can to make them as safe as possible.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Josh is doing himself a little disservice. He does a fantastic job looking at the safety of roadways before projects. That we've done some edgeline rumble strips in areas. Back in 2019, we took it upon ourselves to actually do what's called the ball bank test, and I know that's in the wording there. We partnered with Dodge County, actually. What we had is a firm that came out and drove every one of our curves, every one, and decided, all right, what should that advisory speed be under that sign? Should it be 25, 35? Where should the chevrons be? What does it need? All that kind of stuff. The committee at that time agreed to spend $20,000 to make that happen, and that's why I think it's a real testament that you don't see a lot of curves in this stretch and all the data you look at. Yes, certainly County Highway Q and went up on XX, but you'll see that from when we started that back in 2016, when we started doing this really in depth and looking at our roadways beforehand, we're able to really look at that and saying, okay, we can address those curves by spending that $20,000. That was for the study, and then going out and actually putting all the signs up. And believe me, they do get hit, as you've seen. But I think being proactive is what we've been doing for many years. Even though this is the first time you've seen a full report, this is not the first time we've been looking at these roadways, intersections or roadways.
And just to kind of wrap this up, back on page 16 of the plan under the section 4 for funding on table 6, we did plug in some numbers, just kind of looking at some of the remedies that we had bulleted in those profiles. You can see a lot of the estimated funding required. There's a handful there that have zero. That means that we already reconstructed the road, and we feel that there's really nothing that we need to do at this point in time. Doesn't mean that we're not going to be monitoring moving forward, of course. So these are very, very preliminary and rough estimates on what we could potentially be doing out there to help improve safety. So these numbers are just kind of just an idea, just a guess of what we think might be needed in the future. No funding at this time. The improvements that we do plan on doing in the near future are part of our regular operating budget. And then if you got, reconstruction and repavement, that would come down through the CIP process. So that would all be brought before you as part of that. So I wouldn't dwell too much on the numbers plugged into here. We'll be looking and discussing potential ideas there. The DOT has expressed that they would be open to conversations if they want to sit down, or we've brought them in the past too and discussed potential engineering improvements as well. So a lot of discussion to be had, but I think we got a pretty good start, hopefully, on improvements for safety.
Yeah, just looking at that too, even the first one, kind of okay, we put CIP, but obviously routine maintenance will cover any painting and maybe even the curb and the concrete median, stuff like that, removal. So we say routine maintenance, that means we're doing it under our own current budget and not asking for additional funds. And if you do, if you're so inclined to approve the plan today, that you're not approving the funding. I want to make that adamantly clear that Josh just said too, that any one of these estimated funding requests coming through the CIP would definitely come back as part of the CIP process, either this next January or the 2 years from then. So you're not approving the funding at this time for any of these projects.
Was I supposed to take a motion in a second for this? Oh, this is just a thumbs up, right? Just
This is
Take a motion second, because their request was to pass it on to the county board.
Oh.
I think Scott's going to give a presentation to the county board on the intersection safety plan as well as the roadway safety plan.
Yes.
So you want a motion, a second, and a vote?
Motion, a second, and an approval, yeah.
Okay, well then I guess we'll go forward with the motion in a second. Supervisor Hartwig, Supervisor McCulick. And is there anything else you guys wanted to add to this then, or I guess we should have done that before we talked
No, we'd
about
like
it,
to thank you very much, just not only this committee, but the committees previous for supporting the safety of Washington County.
So again, just to be clear, I mean, the dollar amounts mean nothing, but none of these are on our 50-year program, or is that stuff you might add later on as part of our already implemented 50-year
Certainly,
program?
one of our strategic priorities is update our 2050 plan to go into a 2060 plan.
Sure.
And you'll see some of these same things that you see here now, that is kind of laying the groundwork, if you will, for the future on these these things. The one other thing I wanted to point out when we talked about strategic priorities, and just one more second, once we get done with this, just like the intersection plan, we'd like to extend this to the local municipalities as well, to provide them the same opportunity to look at not only their intersections for safety, but their roadway segments. Now, we might not do, 15 for the town of Wayne or Farmington, maybe look at the top 5 or something like that, or maybe 3 in each category, whatever. We just haven't gotten to their data yet, but we'd certainly like to extend this, but that's why we'd like to take it to the full county board to make all county board members aware of it, that this will be available to their communities as well.
And
Sounds
one,
good.
if I may,
Go
one
ahead.
final note from me too is just because the roadway wasn't highlighted in this plan or profiled, or if you have any questions or comments or concerns from any of your constituents or anybody in the county or anybody in the public, I'm glad to, talk, either come in the office or we'll go over the phone and I can discuss, if they have particular areas of concern, I can dive into that data, that community maps resource, and look at that in certain areas of concern too. So it doesn't have to be in this plan. Obviously, we're looking at the entire system always, not just these areas. But if anybody ever has any questions on crashes, intersection, or roadway segment related, we'd be glad to field those at any time as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anything from the board, Chair? No? Oh, thanks for reminding me. Okay, all approved, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next meeting is Thursday, September 19th, 2024, and this meeting is adjourned.
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first up, we have the minutes. Any revisions or problems with the minutes? Seeing none, I will consider them accepted. We move on to the consent agenda. This will all be kind of lumped into one. Jamie, just a quick word about what this is.
Yes, so these are contracts with farmers for nutrient management planning, which is money that comes from the state for this program and incentivizes farmers to create these plans and meet certain criteria. So all of these are standard contracts with donors.
Okay, so these have all been done, they've all been passed through, and they've all been signed off by Jamie's department. So I'll take a motion. Pam, and seconded by Supervisor Krebs. Any questions or anything on this? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And against? All right. Then we will move on to Register of Deeds Quarterly Report. Ms. Sharon Martin and Ms. Lisa Budish, I imagine.
Yes.
Hot in tow. There we go. Congratulations on your
Thank you.
primary, I guess, is you know what we would call that.
Yes, so I just wanted to bring Lisa along so she could kind of see some of the process. She ran unopposed in the primary, so this will be your new Register of Deeds. January 6th. So Lisa has been with me 9 years as of Saturday, so the transition should be seamless, and Lisa's a great learner, and she will just carry on the legacy.
Sharon's got some
Very
big
good.
shoes to fill, though, so.
As did I, but yes, so be nice when it comes around to January, so. But I just wanted her to get used to the process and the quarterly reports and just become more familiar with this, so. There isn't a whole lot of updates, but on page 10 of your online report or packet, just wanted to go over just a few things with the fraud alert, which is a free service that we offer to the citizens. We would love to see 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. We had just surpassed the 700 mark. So we've got it on our website. We put Of the paper documents, which is less than 20% of our activity, we do stick flyers in there to encourage individuals to check it out and sign up for free. That way, if a document or something gets recorded in our office, they get a notification, just to keep citizens more aware of it. So pass the word if anybody ever asks. So, yes.
Have you thought about reaching out to like title companies and having them help spread the word?
I have. And the feedback that I get from them is have you ever attended a closing with the 25, 40 different types of papers? And we've tried it. They are not interested in adding more information to their packets in closings. Fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of our work, or 80% of our work, is received electronically, so it goes back electronically. So unless I start incurring some postage costs, I don't want to start doing that. But the ones that we can reach out to, we do. We have it we worked with the county exec's office to put it in the newsletter. We have it on our websites.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't know. Just the local realtors. Otherwise, maybe that's something that they could also.
Yeah, we've tried. We've tried.
Okay.
So there's a question behind.
I'll add, we recently redid our will and set up a trust. And so as part of that, we got to put the trust piece on the deed. And my wife had signed up for that. She got the text that there was activity. And so it was really seamless, and signing up for it was easy. Easy for her. I don't know if it would have been for me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. The next one, page 11, are our basic enhancements. This is kind of a standing part of it. The importing miscellaneous documents, there's one that we have all these miscellaneous books that we had scanned over the years. One of the things we've been working on with our land records vendor is to incorporate grantor grantee, which is name indexes for buyers and sellers and mortgagers, to be able to search the paper indexes online. So that should be complete before the end of the year. So that'll be a great assistance to title companies. And genealogists who do historical searching, because you can search names back to the 1830s then, when our records start. So if a family is looking to see if they had relatives or some property in our county, that's another tool for them to use online. So
would that be a search through the Landshark software?
yes, it's called grantor grantee there. So the third one on this page is quality controlling our historical ones. That's kind of another standing project that we're doing. We try to get at least 20,000 quality control names and images and things like that are out there by our team, and they're already at just over 9,500 for the year. So they're trying to pound that out and hit that 20,000 target. So the page 12 for vitals, I took a page out of our county clerk's book and also offered a quarterly Saturday option, because if individuals are coming in to apply for passports, marriage licenses, things like that, sometimes they don't have their birth certificate or a previous marriage certificate. So we made that service available. Jumped into the game a little later, so we only had about 4 to 5 weeks for individuals to sign up, so we had one appointment. However, they were very grateful and appreciative, and I can plan on continuing it a couple more times. If we get no appointments in the next couple of quarters, then I'm not sure it would be worth the effort, but we keep trying to promote it, and we'll continue with it in the county newsletter. Lisa plans on continuing it into her term next year, so well, I guess wait and see on that one. And then the last one, I know I briefly talked about this at the last quarterly meeting. We hired, similar to the back indexing quality control that we're doing in-house, we were able to use some land records money and are working with our land records vendor and contracted through them to do about 180,000 of these quality control indexes and document numbers going back to probably about 10 years worth. So that'll have a good chunk of that project done. They are about 15,000, so they can do it much more quickly than the staff can. And all the money used for this project is not levy money, it is land records money. So anyone have any questions? Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. We will move on to Parks and Trails Quarterly Report and EOS Update. Jamie, are you taking that?
Yes, I have no update. I'd be happy to answer any questions on anything in the packet. You will hopefully see the master plan for the Heritage Trails mountain bike back next month. And you saw the Glacier Hills Lakefront last night, and the TC Energy project in Homestead Hollow pipeline is starting construction in October. So you will start to see some more signage and public education about that restoration project and that prairie happening.
What's the expected timeline of that project? How long should that take?
I believe after November 1st this year, Logan, correct me if I'm wrong, they're clearing trees. So that's the first step. And then it's 2026.
End of project will be 2026. Okay, so it's drawn out.
They haven't given us a very specific window because it's kind of as they go. But that's what they're saying is maximum length.
Now, is this the one with the heritage trails you're talking about, or the Glacier?
This one was Homestead Hollow.
Oh, okay.
Yep, this is the pipeline easement that was transacted recently.
Oh, okay.
Okay, anybody else? All right. Moving on, we're going to go to the resolutions. We have a resolution amending the county board and UW extension budgets. Are you on that, Jamie?
Yes, I think our area extension educator, Cindy Sarkady, and I are going to tag team this.
Okay.
So I'm going to start and go through just some highlights that are in this packet, and then I will be turning it over to her and ask her to talk a little bit about her perspective on the kind of the enhanced 4-H program. So first, I just want to clarify that the resolution in your packet is a net zero. We are taking the budget from the county board and putting it back in UW Extension. So if you recall, or you were here during budgeting, there was a symbolic budget amendment made that took the authority of the UW Extension budget, moved it to the county board because it was the intent and everybody felt like it made very good sense for this discussion to come back to the full county board. It is very widespread. It touches a variety of components of the community. And so therefore, in full transparency, we want to make sure you understand what's happening, even though technically it's within bottom line budget control, if that makes sense, because of the fact that it's contracted positions.
Excuse me, hang on one, Jamie. I got to take a motion in a second on this before we go
Okay.
on. Call for a motion on this resolution. Mr. Supervisor Krebs, Supervisor Pridemore. Okay, let's go back to that.
Okay, so I'm just going to kind of highlight a few things that are happening. So there was a task force that was convened. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about that. We have talked about that before. The task force made recommendations regarding UW Extension. This resolution intends to bring some closure to that conversation. So you can see on page 26, you have the existing status quo 136 contract with UW Extension. It totals $199,000. And then you see the proposed 136 contract totaling $170,000, which is a savings. But you can kind of see which positions would be proposed to be maintained and which ones would be no longer in the 136 contract. So the changes are the elimination of the community development extension educator, the elimination of the human development and relationship extension educator. Both of those educators are currently vacant and have been vacant for some time. The regional ag educator, crops, that is maintained. The regional ag extension educator, dairy, that is eliminated. However, the recommendation of the task force was to have further conversation about that and continue that. The circumstances of the UW Extension and the dairy educator are that our quarter person has been taken by another county. And so there isn't an existing opportunity to get that back because we held it vacant during the conversations. So we are proposing to use those dollars in the budget in another way to support our 59 dairy farms in Washington County and their education. So that is not in there, but it is sort of it's kind of a separate point that we do recognize that is a conversation that was hopeful to be maintained. The positive youth development extension educator, half a person, that position is currently occupied, and that position is proposed to be eliminated at the end of the year. The 4-H educator, that is maintained, and then the marketing specialist is maintained in the future, and then there is an addition of a 100% funded 4-H educator. And that proposal for the expansion of the 4-H educator, I'm going to ask in a moment Cindy to talk a little bit about that. We've talked to and met with Moraine Park Technical College, with a variety of the school districts, with Economic Development Washington County, Hartford Area Economic Development Corporation. We've done a good amount of research on the bullet points you see on page 23 about how we can use our 4-H youth development to bridge that gap in the community. I'm going to pause there. We're going to come back to that, because the last point I think that is worth mentioning to the group and calling attention to is that there is some savings in this budget. However, you see that it's a $0 transaction at the end of the day. That is because the remainder of the money, or any savings in 24 and 25, are being proposed to be carried over and kept for changes we are expecting to make in the facilities area. So we have been talking about, we applied for a grant for a building out at Fair Park, but we are talking about the potential of needing to renovate office space either at Washington County Fair Park or potentially looking at Moraine Park Technical College. So they are putting in a new automation, innovation, and robotics area, and so there's a lot of synergies that goes along with those clubs. So that is why you do not see a decrease in the levy showing up, because it's maintained for facilities, and the rent being paid to the PAC is kept right now as kind of a placeholder. So come the 2026 budgeting, we should have a much better idea of what ongoing costs would be in those areas where we may see some savings, right? Because we did go through the exercise of looking at each line item in the budget with less people, what would the training be? What would, how would this be reflected? And so there is a savings to the county levy, but at this point we are recommending that we capture it and we hold it for program startup and potentially facility cost needs to relocate and rebrand kind of the enhanced 4-H program. And then you see the handout that's called Washington County 4-H Program Enhancement. And I think that a key piece of this is really that the intent of the second educator is to really enhance our existing 4-H clubs and their membership, being able to provide some depth and some robust an injection of resources into what we are providing there, and also work on standing up kind of new clubs in the post-secondary pathways area, which is what we heard from our task force, as well as what we are hearing as a gap in the community from a variety of stakeholders. We have assembled a list, or I have assembled a list that I have shared with Cindy related to the contacts, the principals, the stakeholders, the workforce groups that would be engaged in potentially standing up a specific work plan. At this point, we believe we would be, we should hire the person and then proceed with that work, which is why the proposal is in front of you before we move forward. So with that, and those bullets are really, I think, the points to highlight: clubs that cultivate a highly skilled workforce by fostering critical thinking and STEM activities, increasing access to career exploration for students and parents through awareness building activities that support regional workforce needs, projects that enhance partnerships that increase specific skills, implementing career pathways that extend the value of 4-H through laddering opportunities with colleges, universities, employers. That one was feedback from Moraine Park, who sees a gap in the middle school ages with some of the programming that's already existing. And then projects and partnerships that utilize community facility assets for our youth. And so there was a big discussion around some of the new labs going in and how we can bring access to that to other clubs and kids. And the school districts are in this realm as well, and so they are key stakeholders in these conversations and at varying levels throughout the county doing some of this work. So I would like to ask Cindy if she would like to add anything with regards to specifically, or maybe if you can comment on how the proposal has synergy with some of what 4-H is currently looking to do at the state level.
So this second 4-H position will work to develop STEM clubs. Looking for a volunteer, just like we do any other program area, and then of course recruit market youth to be involved in that. Their plan of work would be the focus on post-secondary pathways. How does this project get you a job in the future and that job exploration, in STEM? Right now we have a robotics club, but the new person will actually be able to enhance that even more with the partnerships that we have.
Do you have any questions for either of us? I mean, there's a lot here, but wanted to make sure hopefully none of this is a complete surprise, and we've seen pieces of this.
Any questions of the committee?
Just re-reviewing the resolution in front of us.
Okay. Give you time to go ahead and do that. There is a lot here, so that is, it might be a little bit unusual, but I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to look at it very concisely so we can make a very informed opinion. And if there are any questions, make sure that they get answered. Do we think we got it?
I'll just make the comment, I understand, this 24-25 budget, there's placeholders in there as they're still figuring some of the programming out. So the next budget would be probably where we're really going to end up settling on what the future would look like for the next couple budget cycles afterwards.
I would say yes to that, but I do think the difference in those 136 contracts gives you an idea because we are paying more for that 100% 4-H educator than the elimination of 2 of the co-funded positions. So the savings there was only it was $195 to $170, so $25,000 in the 136 contract, but then fewer bodies, so fewer training dollars, fewer IT dollars. So I don't know that it's a huge savings, but it certainly is more directed in terms of what the county would like to see in the short term to focus on.
Well, I'm thinking by the time we get to the next budget, are we expecting it to receive more feedback or different feedback from the state as far as just overall? How are they making any changes, or are we anticipating much still coming down the pipeline?
Right. So I think that if you remember, we had a conversation about this 2 meetings ago, and we talked about how there is a bit of turmoil between the counties and the state UW Extension offices, and how the funding works and how that whole system is built. There is a task force working on that from Wisconsin Counties Association. There is kind of an topic there. And I was trying to separate that with this 4-H proposal under the current UW Extension structure. So this proposal works within the current the existing structure. And they have, I believe, they have agreed, right, that we can have another 4-H educator as long as we pay for it 100%. They have not agreed to co-fund that at this point. We are hopeful that there might be some changes to how the funding formulas or things like that in the future under, can we change the structure of UW Extension? But we're recommending this change under the existing structure. So whether or not there's any changes to that in 2026, I wouldn't expect it necessarily, but I would expect, I know we'll be kept in the loop, for example, if there's an opportunity with the dairy educator. So what happened there is that came vacant. We held it vacant because we were in the middle of a task force, and Dodge County opted to take 50% of the position. So now, unless we 100% funded one, which doesn't make sense for us with the declining dairy in Washington County, we're kind of stuck with that. We are getting a lot of benefits from our marketing person and our crops person as it relates to keeping our farmers looped into other dairy education in the area. And so that is one of the reasons why we are maintaining the marketing person and the communications element, so that that programming is spread throughout the county here.
And I don't know if this relates to this resolution or not, but you cited, or you alluded to that 2 meetings ago when we were talking that we were talking about maybe they would need an office space or meeting space out at the county fairgrounds. But now with the communication with Moraine Park possibly sharing some space there, did I catch that right?
So we are looking to relocate UW Extension 4-H because it's primarily 4-H and crops. So it's a handful of people, some rotational people. It isn't a lot of bodies, to another location. The primary discussion has been centered around the Washington County Fair Park and Conference Center because there's a lot of synergy with AIS in some of what we're looking to do there, and shooting sports is out there, and there's a connection that we can see making a lot of sense. That said, there is now also, so part of our 4-H roots is some of these clubs who spend a lot of time at the Fair Park. The vision for some of the new clubs is around this automation, innovation, and robotics lab, and that space, renting that space and being in that arena. And Moraine Park Technical Colleges has indicated that they do have space that we can take a look at. So we have not yet done that. I think we were waiting a little bit for this conversation and a little bit for the fair, the timeline of really diving into and the grant application where we applied to build an expansion for the 4-H offices out at Fair Park. Those three things, which will culminate in September, October, and then really dive into what makes sense for a location. So we have not yet made a decision, but it could be Fair Park, it could be Fair Park and MPTC, it could be, we have to go back and vet what makes the most sense, and that has not been decided.
Not trying to add more to the conversation, but has UWWC been considered for any space with that?
It has not.
Okay. I'm just thinking before we build new at the Fair Park, obviously depending on which clubs or how they utilize it, but we got 200,000 square feet there, so I'm just thinking of how we can fill it. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think that's a good point. At some point, we'll have to really drill into what the recommendations are going to be collectively. We just know that the Public Agency Center is not where we want to keep these 3 or 4 offices. And the other piece of that is 4-H utilizes a lot of the meeting room space at the Public Agency Center, a lot. The clubs use that space. And so it's also, and that is part of the, at least the grant, envisioning another digital classrooms, right? Because there is that element of where do those community clubs meet? Do they all transition to Fair Park? Some come over to the government center? Where do we have enough space and depth for all of the meetings that take place throughout the county? So we're kind of considering those things in the short term. We have a little bit of time, so we haven't made any rash decisions.
Thank you.
Supervisor Conrad?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm curious, other counties, are they also moving to, a 4-H STEM individual within their departments? Are we trailblazing? Are we like 5th or 10th or?
Other counties do have a STEM focus. I know Brown County actually, the extension office is housed in their UW Green Bay, and it's in a STEM innovation center. So they do robotics, they do them in the schools. So other counties are.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to make a comment too. When we were at the Cedar Lake Conservation Foundation event just yesterday. Yeah, seems like so long ago already, started just yesterday. One of the barriers that a farmer mentioned to individuals, some farmers switching to, not using a cover crop and no-till was they don't know how to, program their equipment to utilize GPS systems. And so I'm, assuming that, for the younger generation or like the children or the grandchildren of the farmers, maybe that's something too that they could, end up, learning too, I would think, through these programs. But just a comment that was made yesterday. So hopefully these younger generations won't have that barrier.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Any other questions? Just a couple of things. So it seems like we're kind of a little bit in flux on this. I mean, we're still planning a lot of things with extension. We're still trying to figure a lot of things out. But I think what's important here is that the county's priority is 4-H, and we are. While I wish we could have gotten a little bit of help from extension with that, I'm totally fine and good with doing 100% for another 4-H educator, because I believe that really is very big in our county. It's really worth it. And when I go to the fair, I was at the fair all week, and I seen, and this could be just kind of anecdotal evidence, that seems like there was a little less 4-H exhibiting than what there had been previous, and I'm not sure the reason why, but I want to make sure that we have a healthy and robust 4-H in our county. So make sure that I want to see those projects at the fair, and I want to see the Wayne Crusaders, my particular 4-H group, continue to do all the stuff that they do. It's been fantastic. So I think the county is setting the right priority here. The other stuff, where do we have it? Well, to me, it makes sense probably at the Fair Park, or certainly with the robotics team, and I think that's pretty interesting going forward. Maybe at the technical college, that would be kind of ideal too. I like that idea, because with extension, it's about either education in the farm and what we do on 4-H and or education in robotics. It's not about being in a public building, on a government campus. It seems like you're closer to where you're supposed to be when you're at the Fair Park or at technical college. So we'll figure that out in the future. But for now, I'm very, very pleased with the fact that we are going to add another educator and continue with that. So I definitely like it. All right. With no other questions, we will take a vote. All approving, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And there you go. Thank you. All right, moving on. Ordinance to amend sections 15 through 24 and 70 through 29 relating to land information membership. Sorry, I got cut off. Oh, great. Sorry, my computer has not been being very kind to me today. It keeps cutting out and doing all stuff.
Aaron, the mics are hot. You may have to step up to this mic.
All right, Aaron Dahl will be regaling us with his tales of how he's going to fix this.
Yes, super exciting stuff here. What this does is it's really just a code change. A lot of it is cleaning up language, bringing it more in line with what's prescribed in state statute. It changes some of the titles in our code to match the statutorily required roles of a county, right? So instead of using our job title, we describe the role that statute lays out. And then another change is that it's bringing the number of people on the council from 12 down to the statutorily prescribed 8. I think the committee report does a great job that Eric had written. I think the one thing we will miss moving down to 8 is the synergy you get just by getting all those folks in one room and talking about ideas, talking about what's happening out there. But we've got other plans for how to do that, and we don't think that we need to mandate ourselves to do it. We can figure that out on our own. So that would be the extent of my presentation on this. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions from the committee?
Supervisor Kelly, can we get it first?
Oh, my fault. I caught it the last time and missed it this time. We get a motion and a second. Motion by Supervisor Pridemore, seconded by Supervisor Conrath. We've heard the deal, and any questions for Mr. Dahl? Okay, so this is just a code cleanup. Shouldn't be a huge issue. It should put us back in line with state requirement. We've seen this about 1 billion times in the last 5 years. So, all right. So all for this signify by saying aye. Aye. And any opposed? All right.
Thank you.
And I still don't have a computer.
Could you two share so we could share?
No, yeah, you guys go ahead. I can go back to this because I think we're actually done. Our next meeting is Thursday, September 19th, 2024 at 4:30 p.m. This